This podcast is sponsored by Dis-Chem Living Fit, with a wide range of health products and supplements tailored to your needs. Whatever your needs are, whatever stage in your health and fitness journey you're in, Dis-Chem Living Fit has the products for you. What's happening, guys? If you're interested in optimizing your mindset, unleashing your genius, feeling fantastic, and 10xing your performance, today's episode is for you. Charlie Weyer, thank you so much for coming through.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, brother. Thanks for having me.
I mean, I've seen your work firsthand with, some of your clients. I've seen some of your posts that obviously is needed in today's society. Well, in all society throughout time, there's actually been the need for it. But I think probably more so in today's society because of all the distractions and all the, seeing other people's lives and seeing their happiness or you perceiving them to have so much happiness brings people their own, bit of unhappiness. So for you, do you want to give, if you can give a short introduction, and we'll get into you and your career and, everything that you do, but, just like a 3 lines on, what you do.
Yeah, so Jesse, basically what I help people with is peak performance. Regardless whether it's athletic performance or business or family relationships or relationships at work, because it's all based on the mind. Cutting out all of the fluff, I help people really become a pro in life, because I believe that if you look at nature and the universe, consciousness is always seeking its highest expression. If you look at plants, they're always growing to the biggest and the highest that they can. The universe is expanding, it's getting bigger, and I believe it is our nature to constantly be expanding. And you mentioned there's a lot of noise, and I feel that limits people's expression and they play small. And I think that's an insult to God or the universe or whatever it is you believe in, because that energy is expressing through us. So I believe peak performance is our purpose. It is our purpose as an evolutionary species to become the best that our bloodline has ever seen. So that's basically what I help people with.
You're helping people realize their potential and, getting unstuck from a particular, way of thinking and a way of just constantly doing it, where it's actually wake up, there's more to life, there's a consciousness that you actually haven't tapped into, because there's so much more to this world, and there's so much connectedness between us. You mentioned the plants and you mentioned everything around us, and we think because we're this apex predator that we are, the most special thing.
Yes.
When we're not. Yeah. We're not the most special thing on earth. Just because we are aware of our own life and death, that we think we're the most special. But I mean, a lion doesn't make a lion less special because he's not really aware or cognizant of his, imminent death.
Yeah. No, I believe that everyone is special. Every being, everything has its place in the universe. But I think what makes us humans unique is our ability to create our environments. And we have an imagination. And that is what I see a lot of people lack. And I see that's where poverty comes from. It's a poverty of imagination, that lack of using that gift that we as humans have. I mean, everything inside of this room comes from someone's mind. It was first a thought, every single thing. And that's what we as humans have. We have the ability to create something that doesn't exist yet. So we are creators, and anything that limits our creative expression, whether it's self-sabotage or self-doubt or whatever belief systems that may be, is hindering us from evolving and becoming these creators and fully expressing ourselves.
And I was watching a podcast last night. And it was such a fascinating. It was Joe Rogan and Duncan Trussell. Do you know Duncan?
I don't know Duncan. I know Joe, obviously.
Yeah. So you must. I'll send you the podcast. It's actually fascinating about ideas and about inventions in general. So Joe had this thought where he was saying, what if the idea, or when you have an idea, or if the person that had the idea for electricity, or Nikola Tesla or whatever, those ideas, they popped into these people's head, he wasn't actively, thinking or looking for these ideas. They just happen, most ideas just happen. It's not, you can try and think and, but, Joe was saying how, imagine an idea is like a parasite, because a parasite, imagine it's like a living, breathing thing where, it plants itself inside of you and brings about
its fruition.
It brings it to fruition. And it's just interesting how, we think that we're in control of these ideas that we might have, or we in control.
Yeah.
But it was just an interesting thought where, there's grasshoppers or something where a parasite can basically control their mind and get them to eat each other or whatever it can do. How are we and who are we to think that, these ideas, these amazing technological advances or whatever that we're making aren't these parasites, are actually like planting themselves in our minds and then, making these ideas happen.
Yeah, I think we are all channels for consciousness to flow through us. And I think whatever flows through us is largely dependent on our level of consciousness, on our state of being. If you look at Einstein, he was incredibly spiritual, and he when he discovered the theory of relativity, he saw himself on this flashlight on a beam of light, like literally surfing almost on a flashlight on the light, so it all comes from inside of the mind. And if we have call it a high frequency, right? It means our mind is more open for bigger ideas to flow through us. But if you are someone who constantly lives in worry or fear, those are the type of parasites and ideas and worst case scenarios that's going to be constantly playing out in your mind, and it will come to fruition in your life because our entire reality is an expression of our minds.
And, on a surface level, the easiest way to think about it is, if you learn a new word, oftentimes throughout the day, you'll hear that word again. Or if you, see a car once and you say, that's a really nice car, then you're going to constantly be seeing that car. And it's the same thing where if you're constantly negative and constantly thinking about worst case scenarios, those worst case scenarios are going to happen somehow.
100%. Our mind is like the soil, and the thoughts that we allow in eventually becomes watered. If we're constantly thinking, it's like then now we're watering those seeds, and those seeds are going to grow as an expression inside of your reality. None of us live in the same reality, even though we think we do. But we all have a very different experience in terms of how we attract things, how we frame things, and the meaning we give to things. If you look at Viktor Frankl, Man's Search to Meaning, they were in a concentration camp, but they gave their circumstances a different meaning. So they were able to find peace in a Nazi concentration camp, where you have people in today's life, they've got all the luxuries of modern living, yet they're deeply unhappy and depressed. So it's all in the mind. It's all about the meaning we give to things and the images we are conditioned to create in our mind, because we all have an internal dialogue. So our thoughts basically consists of pictures and that internal voice, right? And if we constantly have that internal dialogue and seeing the worst case scenarios, that's what's going to come about. But the beautiful thing is our minds are like a muscle. We can recondition it into any direction we choose because we're free will beings. And that's the wealth, the greatest riches that I believe we're all born with. It's the free will to direct our minds to whatever ends we desire.
And it's unfortunate that most of people's lives are, formulated in those early childhood stages where they have no control over it.
Absolutely.
In the first 5 years, you might be exposed to so much that greatly shapes you for later, situations in life or ideas that you might have in terms of the world or negative perceptions of things.
Yeah.
And, you need to actively have that self-reflection. You might not, remember something that happened when you were 4 years old, but there are things that have happened that have, control. And I think they say that the first 5 years, the most important years in development in a person's life. And, what you're exposed to. And as you say, it takes that exercise to, condition yourself to get out of those, mindsets and those frameworks and those limiting beliefs and whatever. So for you, people come to you with these, limiting beliefs or these negative mindsets, where do you start with people, to get them on the right track to maybe, being a bit more positive or looking at life, in a different light?
Yeah, it's actually very simple, Jesse. You mentioned the first couple of years of our life, usually between the first 5 or 7 years, children actually walk around in a brainwave state called alpha. So they're highly susceptible to ideas. That's how they form their framework to actually move through this reality, because they're just like sponges. They absorb information. We all do. But the beautiful thing is, no matter how many traumas and how many negative experiences and belief systems you build up in your life, I believe what we call our wounds or those limiting experiences become our gifts one day. For example, I might work with a client who experienced abuse, poverty, violence, alcoholism, but that doesn't mean that's their destiny or their fate, because they might have a deep desire to give their children a life of abundance and sobriety and love and connection. So, and that might inspire them and drive them to be who they choose to be, because ultimately it's free will. So when people come to me with a problem, it might be relationship, health-wise, or financial. It's all based on beliefs, right? So we basically look at what is the desired outcome, right? Because how we keep patterns alive in our mind is through giving it attention, right? So if you are someone who's struggling with money, let's call it that, and you are constantly thinking about lack of money, that is a program that you are strengthening. As Joe Dispenza said, neurons that fire together, wire together. Basically what that means is what you focus on the longest becomes the strongest. Now, there's many references in Buddhism and Christianity and Stoicism that describes that. What we think of eventually starts to manifest in our life. So the first step we do is we shift the focus. We look at what you want, not what is the problem. We remove all of the attention from the problem, because that attention to the problem is what keeps it alive. So we start shifting the focus first of all, and then get clarity. Get clarity of what self-image do you want to create? Because we're all in essence spiritual beings, but we have, like you said, these belief systems that make up our identity, or what people call the ego. There's nothing wrong with the ego. Everyone has that. It's how we interface with reality, but you can have a positive ego or a negative ego. So clarity is the first step. What do you want? Shifting the focus, and then we start to recalibrate the neurology and changing the beliefs through different processes. Journaling, I use hypnosis. I'm a hypnotherapist. I use neuro-linguistic programming to start to change the internal dialogue and move towards your vision instead of focusing on the problems. So that's a very nutshell description. I usually take people on an 8-week journey. Some people
and also it's person specific. Like everyone's, because they'll be different. Everyone
is uniquely different. But the process also involves like looking at your unique skills, the challenges that you've overcome. We all have gifts and talents and abilities. So a large part of what I do is help people become aware of that through introspection, through looking at the past. There's such a big thing about, you must be so present. Yeah, but you have to look at your past to create self-awareness about your limitations and your gifts so that you know what you need to change.
Yeah, I think it's looking at, I might have experienced this in the past, or, my parents were like this, my dad treated me like this. It's not getting stuck in the past and fixating on it. It's analyzing it so that you can understand yourself better.
Exactly. I believe everything that happens to us or with us or through us is ultimately a gift in knowing yourself. The big secret of this life is to know yourself, know thyself. Because if you know how powerful you really are, if you know what you have access to in terms of consciousness and energy and thoughts, and your ability to direct your mind, and the fact that everything is an expression of your mind. When you realize that you're actually so powerful, you can create anything, based within universal laws. That knowledge in itself starts to give people a whole lot of confidence. And then they start to break free just through that self-awareness.
And it's difficult to see, people, and we've all been in different stages in our lives in this state where, you are just going through the motions. You are just, experiencing, or life is essentially just happening. You're not really experiencing and enjoying. And it's kind of, you just, people call it the matrix or the rat race or whatever. And, you can still have a 9-to-5 job, but be excluded from the matrix or the rat race. You can still have to sit in traffic and be present. You can still, you don't have to. And I think social media has glorified entrepreneurs a bit. too much and kind of down or look down on 9 to 5 jobs and all of that. And, you know, it's not one is better than the other.
Not at all.
You know, there's people that work a 9 to 5 job that are way happier than an entrepreneur who is, you know, working maybe even less hours, making more money, but they're, you know, alone or whatever problems they may have. It doesn't mean that because you're independent and are, you know, a free agent from the world, that it makes you happier.
Yeah. So I like the analogy that you use, the rat race or the matrix. So a lot of people, and I see this misconception, is like now someone working for a boss or they're working for a big corporate entity, now they're in the matrix. Whereas, in fact, the matrix isn't out there. The matrix is in your own mind. So you can be an entrepreneur, but doing what you do for external validation, for example, then you're still in the matrix because the matrix is in your own mind. Actually did a talk last week called From the Cage to the Stage, you know, using the analogy of being a former professional athlete and then now speaking to an audience. But the actual metaphor is not the physical barbed wire cage where the hexagon or the octagon where we fight in. The cage was actually in my own mind, the cage of self-sabotage and fighting because I wanted to be famous, and it was all ego-driven, you know. So if you're fighting, I'm not saying that's necessarily ego thing. You might appreciate martial arts, but the only true cage is in your own mind. And the stage, I believe, is when you are free from that cage and you're able to express yourself freely, not for validation from others, but because you're allowing that infinite intelligence of the universe or of God or whatever it is you believe to flow through you. So I believe that's when you're free from the matrix, when you are expressing the fullness of who you are and what you are here to do. So I believe everyone has a purpose, obviously.
Yes. Well, I mean, I know personally, you know, even with having my own job and working really hard, I sometimes have to look at myself and I think, you know, am I doing this to try and make my dad proud? Am I doing this because he's an entrepreneur in his own job and I want to prove to myself that I can be better than him? You know, what are my actual true reasons for doing this? Am I, you know, do I really enjoy the control aspect of it? It's not just me, you know, trying to get away from the rat race. There's so many different underlying factors as to why I want to try to run my own business. Yeah. And I think that it makes me superior sometimes, or, you know, that I'm elevated because I have my own business and I can do things myself. Yeah. Whereas I'm as much driven by ego or, you know, whatever it may be. Yeah. Even though I've tried to exclude myself from the societal standards and, you know, the expectations of society.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Like, you know, a lot of people think starting your own business, you know, it's like, yeah, it's going to give us that freedom. But as you should know, when you work a 9 to 5 job, building a business, you work actually way longer hours. People think, oh, cool, he's got his own business, he sits around all day, but that's actually a lot of work. And that's where I believe passion comes in, you know, and the misconception of what passion is. A lot of people think passion is doing what you love. Where passion, if you think of the word passion, it actually comes from a Greek word which means to suffer, right? Which is very interesting if you think Passion of the Christ. And even Mike Tyson said that motivation is nothing. It's shit. Those were his words. Discipline is everything. And discipline is doing the things that you don't necessarily like doing. He said doing the things that you hate doing, but doing them like you love doing them for a greater ideal, for a grander purpose. And that's passion. You know, it's doing the things that are difficult, that are hard, that are challenging, but doing it because there is a strong why. You want to add value to the world. You want to share a message. You want to create a platform where other people can express themselves. So that's what makes all of those hours and sacrifice worthwhile. And I, you know, coming from a background of studying Buddhism, I went on Vipassana twice, which is where we sit for 10 days, for 10 hours a day, where you're not allowed to speak for those 10 days and you sit and you meditate. And Buddhism is largely about detachment and being free from suffering, which is a great tool to have. But I believe that sacrifice and suffering is part of this life. It is part of expressing greatness, expressing our true potential. Everything can't just be easy. You know, I don't think anything great has ever come from an easy life.
Yeah. And you know, I was listening to a thing about, well, Jay Shetty was talking about his experience of, you know, doing those, you know, long stints of meditations
Yeah.
and exclusion from society. And I want to know your points of view. Like, as you say, like, it's not trying to exclude yourself from suffering. You
Yeah.
need to embrace the suffering,
Yes.
because a lot of personal development and growth comes from suffering.
Yeah.
It gives you opportunity to develop. But, you know, how do you feel, kind of off topic, but how do you feel about monks that like are fully monks,
Yeah.
and that are, you know, have reached enlightenment or whatever, but can't have people close around them and close connection with
Yeah.
other humans? You know, how do you feel about that?
I believe that it's their purpose. You know, like I said, I believe we all came here, or we all are here to express something. And depending on your background and your surroundings and the programs that you've downloaded as a child, and then your influences, and then ultimately what it is you want to experience. And some people want to experience silence. They choose not to talk. You know, some people become breatharians. You know, I've tried a lot of different things. You know, I went vegan. I've tried a lot of different diets. I experienced with Buddhism. You know, I believe that, you know, we can read a lot of information, and there's so much information available these days, but you cannot experience knowledge without experience. So I threw myself deep into the realms of psychedelics, Buddhism, and even mystic Christianity. And I've experienced a lot of the wisdom from all of these things. And for me, I like living in the world. I like connection. I believe we are wired for connection, for human connection. So I believe it's a free will thing. I believe there's a lot of elements evolved in, you know, for example, someone choosing to be a full-on Buddhist monk, live in a monastery, no contact with the outside world. I believe that's them fulfilling their highest purpose.
And I don't know actually if we can ever fulfill or become truly, you know, fulfilled in what you are doing, or at least reach fulfillment through doing something that you believe you were made to do. I think as humans, we're constantly evolving and we're constantly changing, and we constantly need to adapt. And, you know, I think the biggest way to reach fulfillment or true happiness in life is to actively be kind to other people, be loving to other people, be passionate and compassionate and truly empathetic. And actually, you know, you are an extension of myself.
Yes.
I need to treat you the way I want to be treated. Every single human on earth, we are all identical. We just have different souls and different perceptions of reality. But at the end of the day, we are the same thing.
Yeah.
We are the same.
Yeah, I agree. I think in essence, I don't know if you've watched the Joe Rogan comedy skit, and there's a lot of mystical teachings that teach this same thing. I think biblically, you know, treat your brother as you would want to be treated. It runs across all religions. Joe Rogan explains it like, he's my favorite explanation, and he had some edibles and he was looking at this dolphin, and he was like, what if that is just, we are just the same consciousness expressing and witnessing itself through different vehicles, through different chemistry, through different mechanics. And that is such a beautiful explanation. And I agree with that. You know, I've had my own sort of direct experiences in understanding that oneness through psychedelic experiences and through deep meditation. So that is absolutely a way I do my best to live my life, is treat others with as much love and kindness and compassion as I possibly can.
I want to get onto the psychedelic stuff, but first, mystic Christianity. What is that?
So basically, there's been a lot of teachers over the years, and I actually came across that through studying Joe Dispenza's work. He was actually a neuroscientist, but in his workshops, I've done one of his progressive weekend retreats where he uses the word divinity and God, and I was like, okay, cool. This is a neuroscientist that speaks about creation and God and source energy. And in his book, The Placebo Effect, or You Are the Placebo, he speaks about the placebo effect and the power of our beliefs. And he speaks about the couple of states in America where these mystic Christians, they go into these states where they really activate that knowledge of the divinity within them. And then they do something, for me it's a bit silly, but it's kind of to prove a point, and that they drink venom, which should kill a person instantly, like snake venom, and it doesn't happen, doesn't do anything to them because of their belief in their connection with this divinity. And I mean,
so is that where you tied in the placebo effect with
100%,
that?
exactly, because that's what it is, belief. Even Jesus speaks about belief. When you pray as if you have already received what you pray for. So it's very common across all the different teachings, and I believe it's a universal teaching that we are all divine beings, we all have access to this consciousness, and we are actually free to create what we want, yet we are all one. So treat each other with that same kind of respect. So whatever it is you choose to create, never do it when someone can get harmed, so integrity, honesty, things like that, in entrepreneurship, in business, just do everything the right way. And business is all about people, it's all about serving people. What do you do as a business? You solve a problem for someone. So if you have that and that level of integrity, I believe you're playing within the universal law, and you will be abundant and you will feel fulfilled. Whether you're serving 1 million people or you're serving 2 people, it doesn't matter. It's all about having that alignment and that integrity, and knowing that you are just a different body consciousness within the same divine experience as everyone else.
And, that's what's interesting about our experience is, my experience of reality, we've got 2 experiences of reality, right?
Yeah.
The people watching it, however many people watch it, all of them are experiencing it completely differently.
100%.
And that's just the way it is. And it's just so interesting how, if you're in an environment where there's a lot of people, you yourself feel like you're the most important.
Yeah,
whereas
that's what you're aware of.
Yeah, because you're experiencing reality through your lens.
Yes.
But there's 1 million people around you, or 100, whatever it may be, wherever you are, who are just as important, or just as special,
Yes.
or just as much chosen as you are.
Yes.
You are not special in any way. You
100%.
are just special in your own eyes, living consciousness through your body.
Yeah. It's that degree of self-importance that basically, I think, all the mystic teachings help people to try and dissolve, is to disconnect from that level of self-importance. Yes, you are here to experience life, but I think when you start making that switch from service to self to service to others, you actually serve yourself in a much greater way. Because the more people you serve, the more fulfilled you feel, and you'll probably be making more money if you just choose to serve more people. So it's making that switch from service to self to service to others, and releasing that own self-importance, and just realizing we're all playing this game, and let's make it easier for each other, and carry each other or walk each other home.
And that's exactly, you say, we have the power or the divinity to create stuff in our lives. And it's the same as you have the power to create the negativity in your lives, which we touched on earlier, is if you're constantly thinking negatively, you're going to create negative things in your life.
Yeah.
If you're constantly thinking positive, constantly giving people attention, constantly giving people what they deserve, the love, the care, the comfort, and you are, thinking about things happily and positively, more positive, happy things happen. I think the book, The Secret, probably gave manifestation a bad name but luckily in more today's look of it, because it's relatively older now, is, the action needed to bring and make it a realization,
Yeah, people think like, okay, cool, I'm going to sit there and cool stuff's going to appear. That is absolutely the worst thing that could happen. Because what does that do is it limits your self-expression. We are here to express ourselves through action, and I think teachings like The Secret maybe touched on people's lack and fear of hard work. You know, we are here to move through this life with these bodies. We've been given these beautiful, magnificent vehicles to express through life, through which we can serve others. So why would I want to now sit and just think of something and it appears in for me? I'm not going to learn anything. I'm not going to have an experience, so it's, I agree. I think that created actually a lot of negativity in terms of what people expected, and caused a lot of frustration, of people questioning themselves and their own ability as creators, because I believe we're all creators. I believe there's that balance of, yes, it's important to visualize, start creating new mental images in our mind. And someone who works deeply with manifestation in my clients, it's all about what you do. It's all about how you're going to express. That vision is supposed to inspire you to take certain actions and move through this reality, so that you can attract people, experiences, and opportunities that's going to allow you to fulfill that expression. But ultimately, if you're doing it from a place of service to self and not asking the question of how can I serve others, then it's always going to be this element of lack in your life, just from experience. When we make that flip from how many people can I serve, how deeply can I serve them, how quickly can I help them, overcome these challenges within themselves. And when we start asking those different questions, then our own problems become solved when we get good at solving other people's problems. I believe the best way to feel good is to make other people feel good about themselves.
No, absolutely. If you want to be loved, you need to first love.
Yeah, I don't think you can do one without the other. You can't experience love without giving love.
Yeah. And you touched on, fixating on the negative. And I personally, I know I've done this in relationships where, you think about the negative aspects of a relationship, and then there's just more negativity within the relationship because of those negative thoughts. Then you overthink about other things, and you catastrophize other aspects of it, and then things just get worse and worse and worse. And it's that fixation on the negative. Instead of looking at, okay, well, what's good? What can I improve on? Let's only look at the good. Whereas when you focus on the negative, it just remains negative.
Looking at relationships, I believe, starting your day, whether it's in a relationship, just starting your day with two things: active appreciation and positive expectation, right? Because when we actively appreciate what we have, the word appreciate means to make more. It means to enhance, to expand. So when we appreciate all of the good things, those things are going to start growing. Like, where attention goes, energy flows. It's basic science, quantum physics, but it's also a very real thing. And when we expect positive expectation, and it's a muscle, you can tell people to expect positive things when they've had a shitty month or a shitty year or a difficult life. It's going to be difficult for them. But it's because they've trained that neural pattern, that muscle of negative expectation for so long. And I tell them, start making a list. What positive thing can you experience? What are you in control of? And then building. So it's like, if you go to the gym, you can't just, if you haven't trained in 6 years, want to go and deadlift 240 kilograms or, so start small. Make a little list. Start with 3 things. And then 10 things you appreciate. Then start to look at things you appreciate about yourself and about others, and physical things. Start looking at different aspects. Make little lists. And if it's a relationship, make a list of everything you appreciate about your partner, everything you appreciate about yourself in the relationship, everything you appreciate about what you do together. And then all of a sudden, when you start to put intention behind it, you'll actually realize things that you were never aware of. And get your partner involved. Like, what do you appreciate about me? She might give you something that you actually weren't aware of about yourself. I've got this exercise I give to a lot of my clients who battle with confidence. I say to them, message the 5 people you love the most, who are the closest to you, and ask them, what do they most admire about you? And they come back to me, they're like, I don't know, I have these characteristics. I was like, yeah, because we're multidimensional beings. We are not just who we think we are also who how others see us. We exist in a billion different realities, So it's all about finding creative ways so that we can build an identity, a healthy identity that's going to move us through life with more compassion and confidence and clarity.
And now, talking about the psychedelics and, your work with psychedelics, I've been extremely fascinated with, I still, regardless of, being fascinated, I've never been, willing enough to try it just out of fear. And, I'd like to know, because I've watched documentaries on it. I've watched, obviously, Joe Rogan talks about it a lot. I've watched other podcasters talk about it, but I've still just haven't taken the leap to actually try it. Let's maybe first talk about, trying it. Should you try it with, a guide, or, because you don't want to just go to the guy that also sells weed on the side of the road and buy some shrooms from him. You want to do it maybe from a correct source with a guide with you. If someone's looking at maybe starting it, how should we maybe start it? Then we'll go into, your experience with it.
Yeah. So definitely you want to find someone with a good track record, someone that maybe someone who's been facilitated by a certain individual and they felt safe and they had a positive experience. Like with anyone, like working with a coach. You want to work with a coach who's got a track record, who's got results, and also importantly, who you resonate with. Because maybe I use a certain coach who's great in business, but you don't resonate with his energy. That might not be a good fit. So doing the research, doing the homework, finding out which facilitators have a great record, who's been trained, and who you resonate with. Obviously, you have a conversation. You need to interview. You need to interview a person because you are giving them access to something very sacred, which is your mind. You go to a massage therapist and they're going to touch your body. So you want to feel safe with them. So your mind it's a sacred place. So you want to feel safe.
And I think that's also why I've been more hesitant. Like,
of course.
Let's say a masseuse, they're touching my body. Okay, cool. But your mind is way more sacred. Well, for me at least.
Me too.
My mind is way more sacred to me. And I feel a lot more vulnerable, at least, opening myself up to, possibilities, thoughts, fears. And I think that's also why people might be hesitant to get into something like shrooms as opposed to drinking alcohol, which is a million times worse.
I think so.
But then, they'll do the alcohol because historically it's been okay.
Listen, psychedelics can be just as dangerous. It can be way more dangerous. Like I said, it's something that opens up your psyche. It basically opens up the bridge between your conscious and your subconscious mind. And if you have something inside of your subconscious that you haven't faced and you get access to that, maybe too rapidly, or maybe in a space where you're not equipped or you don't have the support to deal with that. Maybe someone takes a high dosage of psychedelics at a party or at a setting that's not really conducive for them to process information, because you're basically just accessing information in this terms of feelings and visions. It can be dangerous. People have gone into psychosis. So it is something that needs serious consideration, and also looking at your intention for doing it. I've got a firm belief that it's not for everyone. Psychedelics isn't for everyone, just like running a business isn't for anyone. So if there's a calling to it, and if you feel that it can solve something in your life, if you feel that there is something inside of you that needs addressing, and you've tried other experiences, for example, coaching or therapy, that just didn't scratch the surface or impacted you in the way that you wanted to, definitely something to be considered. There's a lot of research now in the last 20 years with MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, John Hopkins, and a lot of other universities who are now taking these things more seriously and studying them and advocating for the responsible use of psychedelics. So, yeah, I think the importance is do your research, find someone with a good track record, maybe someone that you know, and someone that you trust and that you resonate with.
So for someone that maybe doesn't want to have like a trip, something like microdosing, what's the benefit of that?
Yeah. So microdosing is basically taking psychedelics in sub-perceptual doses, which means it doesn't alter your perceptions greatly, so that you can still function. You can take, for instance, a microdosing and still go to work. You can still go train, although there is a very slight shift in awareness where you might feel a little bit more present. You might be more aware of your own internal dialogue. You might be more aware of your emotions, which gives people the opportunity to then create a higher degree of self-awareness. So I definitely believe in it. I've taken a lot of people, more than 70 people now, through a microdosing program that I created with great feedback, great results, people experiencing greater levels of productivity, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, even physical energy, because a lot of the times things that can fatigue us are our own thoughts. And people don't realize people have these massive energy dips and they just feel drained all the time, but they're eating right and they're exercising, but it might be a thought pattern that's actually draining your energy.
Well, I know personally, you know, while I'm running sometimes, then you get into a spiral of negative thoughts. Then I start feeling more tired.
100%.
Then I have to stop. I've said, Jesse, what is the benefit of thinking about the stress of this client? You're running now. Thinking about that is not going to help anything. You're not going to be able to solve any issues now. Focus on the run. Focus on your breathing. Just, you know, enjoy the run. Look around you. Focus on what you're doing. And immediately, just those slight changes and
Fatigue's
better
gone.
positive thoughts.
Yeah.
I have more energy and I'm able to run better. My breathing slows.
Yeah.
And I've found when I'm actually actively trying to be present on a run,
Yes.
it's so much easier to
Yes.
run. My breath, my heart rate lowers, you know, my thoughts become more clear, you know, just like even if my leg is sore, feeling the leg, feeling the experience of my Achilles maybe being tight, it doesn't make me, I'm not thinking, oh, my Achilles sore, blah, blah. It's just me consciously thinking, okay, feeling my Achilles, thinking about the blood flow, thinking about the tension of the joint or whatever. And actually it helps a little bit in alleviating that.
No, absolutely. Like people don't realize that every single thought we think has a chemical response in the body. Every thought we think, they call it, in the Bible, they say the word becomes flesh. You know, the word is the thought. It's the vibration that creates a chemical response in the body. You know, people who are experiencing negativity, and a lot of it's around eating, which I believe is such a confusing subject for so many people. But for me, it's not even as much about what you eat, but it's about how you eat. You know, you can eat a plant-based diet, but if you are eating it out of fear of getting sick, you're going to get sick. You know, you see people eating really, really well out of fear of getting sick, and they actually get cancers and all of these things. And people who just appreciate what they eat, whether it's a chop or a piece of salad or a piece of lettuce, you know, the people who are actually enjoying and eating with awareness and presence, those are the people that are healthy, regardless so much of what they eat. And same with training. Like in hypnosis, you can have someone try and lift a weight, right? And you just, like their personal best, for example. And then you load up an extra 10 or 20 kilos for, let's say, a deadlift or a squat. And in about 2 minutes, just getting access to their subconscious mind and give them one positive affirmation, like I'm powerful and I'm getting stronger by the day or by the moment. They'll break their personal best without even training towards that, just by giving instruction to the mind. That's how powerful the mind is.
So explain hypnosis in terms of that aspect of, you know, giving that affirmation. How do you do the hypnosis? Because I think people are thinking you got a clock that you're dangling in front of their eyes.
Yeah. So hypnosis is basically any form of communication, right? Any form of communication, but in the sense of practical hypnosis, you want to get a message through to the subconscious mind. You know, that's where all of our programs are. That's like the operating system of a computer. You can't change instructions on the front end. You know, you have to get to the back end to change how things actually function. So if I basically tell you, Jesse, dependent on what it is you want to achieve or create, if I just tell you, no, you can do that, and you have a belief that says otherwise, it's not going to change anything. But there's 3 ways we can access that operating system, right? Is through emotional intensity, repetition, and authority, right? If you look at COVID, you know, a lot of people gave up their freedom because authority said so. You know, if you are growing up as a child, a teacher or a parent or a policeman tells you something, you're going to want to obey just because it's authority. Whether they telling you the right thing to do or not. It's just how we've been wired and programmed. And the other two things is repetition, right? It's very similar. Like I said, the mind is a muscle. And if you want to strengthen a neural pathway, create a belief, create a new result in your life, you have to repeat it over and over again, or create an emotional intensity or experience an actual thing that's going to shift your belief. For example, Roger Bannister. He broke the 4-minute mile after people thought it was impossible. No one would ever break the 4-minute mile. When he broke it, I think within 6 weeks, 46 other athletes broke the 4-minute mile. Why? Because they saw with their eyes
that it's possible.
And that's how powerful beliefs are. So how I traditionally help people access the subconscious mind is by changing their brainwave states. Not through doing this, through using language, using specific language, getting their conscious mind to just relax. Obviously, there needs to be a level of trust because
they need to be open to it.
Yes. The crazy thing is people go into hypnosis multiple times a day. Every morning when you wake up, that state where you're just like moving into waking consciousness, and right before you go to bed, when you watch a movie and you actually feel an emotion, that's a state of hypnosis. You're so absorbed in what's going on that things are penetrating your subconscious mind and you're feeling, your adrenaline's pumping. That's actually a state of hypnosis. There's the whole media is full of hypnosis. Advertising, I mean, all of a sudden you crave a Coke. It's just you've let it into your subconscious somehow. So change people's brainwave. If you want to get them from the beta consciousness to an alpha, a more receptive state to alpha or theta. And then obviously giving instructions according to what it is they want. What are the beliefs here? What are the results? And then using language. There's a lot of language patterns that we've been trained to impact the subconscious mind once you've reached that brainwave state. And then there's also a large degree of creating images in someone's mind. For example, getting them to see themselves in that end result, having achieved that, having lifted that weight, and then adding that internal dialogue, maybe hearing someone congratulating you. So what you're doing is now you're creating neural pathways that's going to affirm that reality, because our body doesn't know the difference between what is real and what's imagined. They did studies in the 60s through mental rehearsal when the Russian athletes were like winning a lot of gold medals. They were working with these mindset gurus who basically got them to mentally rehearse things. And then eventually the Americans caught on. They did this mental rehearsal experience with basketball players. So they did a split test. They got one group to shoot the hoop, actually, and one group to rehearse themselves shooting the hoop. And then when they actually did the challenge and the test, the people who mental rehearsed actually got higher scores than the guys who were physically shooting the hoop, because in the mind, you don't have to miss, ever. So you're creating those neural patterns over and over and over, and then you're creating new neural pathways. You're actually creating muscle memory. And then when they actually shot, they were much more accurate.
When I was in school and I was big into rugby, and I used to kick for poles sometimes. Before I went, maybe like grade 8, 9, and 10, I used to kick for poles. And the coach at the time used to say, okay, put the cone on the ball on the cone, get in your position, close your eyes, and visualize yourself kicking the ball, and it goes perfectly through the center of the poles.
Yes.
And even with doing that, obviously I wouldn't always get it, but I know for a fact when I did that, the possibility of me actually succeeding the kick was greater.
Of course.
It's not going to be perfect every time, obviously, because, but with experience and like let's say LeBron James, he's conditioned himself a lot more to be susceptible to what he visualized to becoming reality. I obviously was, 16 years old, so it's slightly different, but I know for a fact it was beneficial doing that visualization.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been proven now so many times. I mean, you look at guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Conor McGregor, Tiger Woods, all of these guys know this. They speak about it in these documentaries. I mean, a lot of people think Mike Tyson was just this beast. Gus D'Amato, his trainer, actually took him for hypnosis training from him when he was 16 years old. to start reprogramming that mind, because he didn't have the belief in himself. He had the raw skill, yes, but he didn't have that mindset yet. Any success in anything, whether it's business or sport, you need two things. You need the skill set, you need to actually do the thing, and you need the mindset that's going to actually get you to be relentless in your pursuit and have that focus and have the beliefs that's going to support your outcomes.
And the beliefs is more important than the skill.
Yeah, mindset 80%, skill set 20%.
Because, obviously within different things, like if I have terrible coordination, no matter how much I believe I can be a professional boxer or whatever, I can't be.
Yeah.
But like with things that repetition and effort, like building a business, you don't have to be particularly good with money. You don't have to be particularly good with, maths or particularly good with people. But if you have the belief that you're good with people, you're going to be good with people.
Yeah, you need a few skill sets. I mean, and you can learn those skill sets from anywhere. Marketing, how to sell, how to close, how to create content. And it's steps that you have to follow. That's the easy part. You have to have that mindset to show up every day, and when things get tough, building business is tough. You have to have that relentless determination, the discipline, and the motivation and the passion, and that's all the mindset, and that is what's most people lacking. And that's why I love doing what I do, because a lot of people are so skilled, they don't have the confidence, they don't have the, they doubt themselves, they procrastinate, they self-sabotage, and that is what I see is the biggest thing for me, was being able to take that mindset from being a pro athlete and then apply it in my coaching practice, in helping others, showing up with absolute commitment, showing up with relentless determination without the possibility of failing. And that's what I believe makes me successful in a coaching, getting my clients the results, is because of my own mindset and my own beliefs.
It's tough, for people that are in that limiting belief space, or in a rut, or in, let's look at it like you're stuck in a wall, and you're trying to climb out of the wall, but there's a gravity that's keeping you in that wall. The gravity of, knowing, okay, well, like, let's just look at if it's procrastination. I know the feeling I'm going to have because of this procrastination. I'm aware of it, so I feel slightly better knowing and being in this space. And there's that gravity that just pulls you, the people you surround yourself with maybe pull you and keep you in that mundane, coasting through life type of mindset. Then, you could get bursts where you get out of it.
Yeah.
And you realize how great life feels when you are out of the wall, when you're out of the procrastination or the limiting mindset, and you feel, and there's that gravity that's still slightly pulling you towards the rut, or pulling you towards the well of negativity.
Yes.
And then you also, when you're in the space of, enjoying life, fulfilling, abundance, you forget how bad you felt in that rut. And that's why some people get dragged back into the wall and back into that space, and then they realize how bad it is, and then they get back up. So I think it's also, once you're in the good space, once you're in the place where, you're enjoying life, you're passionate about everything, you're good to other people, you need to, rework those wires to stay there. And, it's definitely easier to stay there than it is to get out. But there's that gravity that keeps people there.
No, absolutely. Like, I mean, I think I wouldn't have been doing the work that I do if I wasn't in the rock bottom of my life lows. When I retired from the EFC, went through messy divorce, lost my house, lost my car, had no income. Fighting was all I knew. So I was without a house and then out of car for 8 months and couch surfed. It was quite intense. But that basically, and I think the big kick in the butt is when you realize how shit it is. When someone doesn't want to change, I believe only until you have suffered enough will you actually do whatever it takes to move in the direction of your vision. And when my kids were, I think they were 4 and 2 years old at the time, they went to go live with my in-laws. So I didn't have access to my kids. I very rarely had access to them. And that was a big wake-up call for me. And I decided I'm going to do whatever it takes. And then I started investing in myself. I started studying hypnosis and NLP and a lot of modalities. But it wasn't until I actually had to pay good money to work with coaches what I realized I mean, in professional fighting, if you think about it, if you have someone trying to learn mixed martial arts on YouTube, and he's now for a year, and he's going to fight with someone who now has worked with a coach for a year, it's a no-brainer. Someone with a coach, whether it's in business, in life, in relationships, or in sports, they're always going to outperform someone without a coach. So I remember that from fighting. You need that support. You need that someone to hold you accountable, to help you get that mindset. And started investing in coaches, and then my life started to shift so rapidly, and that's why I chose coaching. Because I understand the value of it. I wouldn't.
You saw it how it helped you.
Absolutely. I believe a good coach can literally collapse time between where you are and where you want to be. But it was scary for me. When I almost had nothing to invest that money with, like, this is what I've got, and I even had to borrow money. But then coach got the mindset right so that you can think about money differently, change those limiting beliefs. And it was absolutely just a no-brainer, and I still see it with people. They come, they hear, okay, cool, these are the rates for coaching, and then they're like, no, let's say it's 50 grand for a 12-week program. But then I say to them, okay, cool, what is it going to cost you if you don't solve this problem in the next 10 years? And then all of a sudden, it's a $1 million problem or a 3 million rand problem, because there's divorces on the table and losing the business and all of these things. And then all of a sudden that investment is nothing, and it always pays itself back. So yeah, investing in yourself, I think once you've realized that you've been in that gravitational pool of self-sabotage or procrastination for long enough, and you're willing to do whatever it takes, that's when you're going to change, regardless of how it happens.
And what's fascinating, and you say you were at rock bottom, financially and, with your life in general. But, there's people that are in successful businesses that are still in the exact same quagmire of, despair, unhappiness, and, they need it just as much as the person that has absolutely no money.
Yeah.
The money aspect isn't the thing that's, making the person that's poor more at rock bottom than the person with more money. It's the same place, the same amount of suffering.
No,
it's
absolutely.
just a different perspective.
No, absolutely. I mean, the majority of clients that I work with have successful businesses, and it's relationship, either relationship with children, relationship with wife. And a lot of the time that relationship is simply a reflection of their relationship with themselves, with their own emotional state, with their own belief systems and thought patterns and programs of guilt and shame and all of these things. And yeah, all the money in the world, if you're not fulfilled and happy within yourself, then that money means nothing. Yeah, you can buy all the comforts, but we're all here to be happy. Why do you want money? Why do you want to buy things? So that you can actually just be happy and okay and have freedom and have options, but it's not going to make you happier.
Yeah.
Until
and that's a trap that I've been in where, I think, okay, I'm going to work really hard to build the life I want. And then you're living for the life you want. Then you're not living your life now because you're thinking like, no, I'm going to make so much money so that time, I have an actual family.
Yeah.
We're comfortable, there's enough money to go to whatever school, all of these things. But yes, that's important to provide for your family like that. But then you're making yourself unhappy to get to that point. And that point you're actually never going to reach.
It's 100%. Like, happiness is not a destination, it's a choice. It's absolutely a choice. It's right here, right now. It's available to all of us. But sometimes there is a great degree of mental training required for you to build that strength in focusing on the things that are positive and good, because it's all a degree of focus. Like you said, people, they can have all the cool things in the world, but they're not happy. And it's because they have conditioned their mind to focus on things that make them unhappy. And it's like flipping that switch. But sometimes flipping that switch takes a lot of work. It takes, like I said, practicing things like active appreciation, positive expectation, so that you can switch from that voice in the head that's complaining about this isn't good enough, to, geez, I appreciate this. Oh my God, like that hug I got this morning from my little one, that little smile, she was in such a good mood. Things like that. That's the fulfillment. That's the happiness. And it's here all the time. We're constantly surrounded by the things, but we'll never see them if that voice in our head is complaining.
So the unconscious Wi-Fi, in closing, you don't just work with individuals, you work with groups, corporates, a bunch of people. You want to explain, how people can reach out to you, and, if it's like a corporate or an individual, whatever, how can they get in contact with you? And also maybe explain the difference between working with like an individual with the coaching and then the group aspect.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jesse. So obviously the individual coaching is for anyone who feels they want to live a greater life. There's an interview process, so anyone can reach out to me. Social media is the easiest. I'm very active on Facebook.
I'll put your link in the description as well.
Yeah, thanks. And then I've also got a website called The Conscious Wi-Fi, and basically conscious
Did
Wi-Fi.
I say unconscious Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Conscious Wi-Fi,
That's fine.
sorry.
So the conscious Wi-Fi is basically a metaphor for our ability to access whatever information and energy it is we need to fulfill our destiny and to create the life that we want. So I do these events where I've got radio frequency headsets, and I've got a microphone, and then I curate or I engineer an experience for corporates and teams and schools. I do mindful movement program for schools, where it's basically a mindfulness process combined with certain movements where I help people to learn to change their own brainwave frequencies with themselves and build up their own conscious muscle so that they can make the necessary changes in their lives, and experience what peak performance feels like. And once you've done it, it's effortless. Peak performance is not a grind. Peak performance is a switch that is flipped in your mind, and then you just show up. You feel yourself in that flow. Some people call it flow state. I like the word peak performance because I believe that we are here to perform at high level. And in the society, with all of these distractions, unfortunately, a lot of people just aren't. They aren't expressing the fullness of who they are, but it's a beautiful journey. We're all here to help each other, and I think everyone's doing a great job.
Awesome. And then also like the talks that you give?
Yeah, so more recently I've moved into the realm of professional speaking, and I speak on my journey from the cage to the stage, and also explaining the metaphor of the cage being the limitations of our mind and how people can use simple strategies and frameworks to experience more freedom in their own lives.
So then people can also, book you for that on
Absolutely.
the websites and everything.
Yeah, I'm available for talks. I've got an agent. They can contact me, and then I'll just put them in touch with my speaking agent, and he'll handle all the rest.
Awesome. Charlie, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I know people are going to find great value in this.
Oh, thanks, Jesse. Thank you so much for having me,
Awesome.
and you're doing great work.
Thank you. And thank you guys for watching.